Hello and welcome to The Entrepreneurs on Monocle Radio, the show all about inspiring people, innovative companies and fresh ideas in global business. Today's programme is a Greek special. First, we'll meet a former lawyer who left behind the legal briefs to launch her own jewellery line, all made in Athens.
There is an element of heritage in Greece in terms of jewellery. And I always felt strongly that the made in Greece is not equally represented as the made in Italy. And we have a great tradition in jewellery. And I thought this is something we can create at scale.
And later, I'll be joined here in the studio by Monocle's Chiara Remella to hear all about Monocle's new handbook on Greece. Chiara, what can we look forward to?
Well, there's a plethora of businesses in this sunny country just doing really exciting things. People who've come back, people who've always had roots there, just making really exciting things happen.
This is The Entrepreneurs with me, Tom Edwards. You're listening to The Entrepreneurs. Alexia Karides is the founder and CEO of Ysso, a jewellery brand rooted in traditional Greek craftsmanship. An Athens native, Alexia launched Ysso in 2020, working exclusively with a workshop in her hometown dedicated to preserving Greece's goldsmithing and traditional jewellery-making techniques to create organic, sculptural designs inspired by her heritage. Each piece is handcrafted, making every design truly one of a kind. She stopped by at Midori House to chat with Monocle's Natalie Theodosi about the latest collection, the enduring appeal of physical retail, and what's next for Ysso. She began by telling Natalie about the start of her journey.
I really didn't have a traditional background in coming into jewellery. I studied mathematics at university and then I converted to law, all in the UK, and I worked as a corporate lawyer in London most of my 20s. I trained at various places and I kind of qualified as a UK lawyer. After that, I realised that I wanted a more creative kind of outlet for my work. And I realized that there was no chance for me to achieve that within the space of corporate law. At that point, my mother was designing jewellery and I kept wearing it at work and I was wearing it out with friends and people were commenting on it. And I thought it has so much meaning saying the story of my mother designing the jewellery, which caused me to kind of just feel more fulfillment in kind of that kind of just like talking about the work of the craftsman and talking about our inspirations. So I started kind of going into the kind of toying with the idea of what about if I did a brand with my mother's designs and learn how to design myself as well. And then I worked a little bit for a very short period of time at Ysso in the UK, and then I worked at a marketing agency. And after those experiences, I felt confident in sort of going full-time in pursuing building a brand.
And it sounds like inspiration can come very close to home. You were looking at your mother's work. You don't need a far-flung trip or something really out of the box to get an idea.
Yes, that is a very good point because I actually, I love Japan. So we've been to Japan a few times. My father used to work there a lot and I had left the law firm and I thought I should go on a trip to Japan to find inspiration, And then I thought, well, no, actually, I would rather, because I will go there and it will have nothing to do, it won't have it something to do with the thing I want to create right now. I thought I'll postpone it. I'll do it a bit later. And I focused on going back to Greece a lot. And I was going back to Greece quite a lot between 2018 to 2020, like those 2 years before COVID, just to kind of travel around Greece and go home and stay with my mom and kind of, which I hadn't done because I studied in the UK. I kind of spent a lot of time trying to creatively position where I wanted the brand to be. I came up with a name of the brand. Ysso means really nothing in a way. It's a made up word, but it comes from the word gold in Greek. Χρυσό, which I just wanted a short word, and I spent time. I kind of made myself be in an environment where I felt familiar in a way and kind of started looking at things in a different way. And it became very personal. And then I realized I always knew I'm my own client with the jewelry. Like I am the woman I'm trying to target. So I thought that I have to follow kind of what I think is nice and beautiful. And I would hope that other people will find that as well.
And from a business perspective, because you are your own client, what was the gap in the market that you spotted? Was there also something in terms of price point, in terms of the way jewelry was made, that you thought there is an opportunity and I should take the leap and start the brand?
It's fascinating. I keep thinking about this all the time because I'm constantly thinking, what are we doing? Are we meeting a need? And price point, definitely, I personally was looking for things at the price point that I consider affordable for something that's good quality. And in the quote-unquote fashion jewelry space, you found a lot of lower price point items, which also felt like they were lower price point or looked like they were lower price point because they were made in mass. And fast fashion is something, I don't like fast fashion. Like, I totally understand people buying it, but there is a point that people are going into, if I buy 10-pound t-shirts, that they're going to disintegrate, or they're going to cause harm to the environment if you're throwing them away because you'll have to. You might as well buy one. And that's how I always thought. I take a lot of my mother's older clothes and I wear them. And that's always kind of the positioning that I thought that I want to buy things at a reasonable price point that are well crafted. And I saw that gap in the market for jewelry. And I thought, okay, there are big brands creating much more expensive, lower quality than ours pieces. And I didn't feel like I could buy into that because I knew that that wasn't worth that price point. And so I was massively inspired by seeing our artisans work and seeing the handcrafted nature of the pieces and seeing how the time that they take to do them, but also there is an element of heritage in Greece in terms of jewelry. And I always felt strongly that the made in Greece is not equally represented as the made in Italy, and we have a great tradition in jewelry, and I thought this is something we can create at scale in a way, mainly because we have the craft, but we also have kind of a wealth of inspirations in Greece that you can kind of bring people into that environment.
And you're right that there is this incredible heritage of jewelry making, but at the same time, it's a dying craft in many ways. Yeah. And you found those small workshops and people and build relationships. I think you've built a little family of your own with you and your mother. So tell me about finding the right people and getting them to believe in your project and take on the work.
So that was a fascinating story because my mother started doing jewelry in 2015. So it's been nearly 10 years. And she was doing literally one by one. And the reason that we ended up with them was because they accepted no minimum, they didn't have minimum orders. So they were very happy to just let her test. And I was working as a lawyer and she would give them to me. And it was very gradual from 2015 to 2019. She would just make a few pieces here and there, but it was the same guys. And they would teach her as well. They would tell her this thing doesn't, like, it's too heavy or it's too light. You have to work like that. So we took a long time for R&D, like to test and learn. And we were fortunate enough that this workshop that we've started working with was receptive to that. And then during COVID, we kept testing. At that point, their other clients probably had lower volume and they started allocating more time to us. And then we went to market with certain pieces that we could see were performing better. And so we have a catalog of over 200 designs from my mother, just testing and learning. That's our own designs. And then we keep creating as we go. So it was very much a collaboration between us and the workshop in us developing our techniques and learning how to work with them. So we were just very fortunate to have people that are kind of worked with us instead of for us.
And as you've grown, have they been able to take on more work and handle the increased volumes?
Yes, they have, because they they have all these other clients, and they're smaller clients because they don't take minimum orders. So they're all smaller clients. So they always had an ebb and flow in terms of kind of order flow from their other clients. So they were able to accommodate by just scheduling us in and planning us. And they have the ability to kind of short-term hire someone for extra hands, And there are more workshops in Athens. This is not the only one, but this is the one we work with now, and we've built a relationship with. But eventually, as we scale, if we need to kind of expand to a different workshop, he'll either expand or we'll get a second one.
I want to talk about the success that you've had post-launch, but before that, I think we have to talk about your mother, because you keep referring, she's part of every answer and such a core of the brand. So tell me a little bit about your creative collaboration and also the benefits of working with family and running a family business.
Yeah, so that was in some ways at the beginning maybe challenging, but then also the reason why it works. That's how I see it. So, I mean, I don't think I would have been able to do such a pivot so drastically had it not been for my mother. Because I came from a world where, as you said, was very kind of standardized and kind of very logical, to going into working in something purely creative. And when I went from law to then I left law and I went to the studio with my mom and we're like, let's make jewelry. Her process was pure creativity. It has no structure whatsoever. It was like, this looks nice and maybe we do it a bit like on the left or rather on the right, like completely from I like it point of view. No benchmarking. No, there is a trend in X and we have to emulate a trend.
So pure intuition.
Pure genuine intuition. And I saw yesterday this thing which reminded me of that thing and I think we should do that thing. Very much non-structured. And it was a shock for me. I was thinking, oh my God, how are we going to do this? How do you build a business out of this? And then I learned a lot. And I saw the pure intuition pieces are the ones that build our brand in a way, because they're just generally, even though you don't do benchmarking, if the only thing you're thinking about is jewelry, you start thinking, how would people wear them? What do I like? And if I just generally just see things around me, you create things that are needed because you obsess over it in a way. And then it was just, it created like pieces that maybe they were not trendy, but also at the same time had influences that resonated with people. So they were maybe kind of, some of our pieces are quite retro, but with a bit of a difference. Our best sellers are the flower bud earrings, which are like, they're round, they're kind of like, they look more retro in a way, but they have elements of kind of our signature craft where you can see the work. And we wouldn't know that these would become our best sellers. It's just by testing it that we went out to market. And then that kind of informed how we started building the brand. And that's how we're going to start doing collections now around kind of creating completely free and then structuring things according to how we see the clients responding to them. And I want that to be kind of a conversation between like building collections by taking into account the data of how the client respond and buy, but also creating completely free and testing at the same time. It
sounds like you achieved a balance where you create it freely, you follow your intuition, and it seems like that's your mother's forte as well, but you put some structure around it.
Yeah.
And it also sounds like this is an opportunity for you to kind of bring alive all the creative inspirations that your mother has had for years and personal memories, family memories, and even your Greek Cypriot heritage, right?
Yeah, it's exactly that, because I do feel like we bring our own inspirations into things inevitably, and then people will resonate because we're all part of a collective, like I live in London, my mother had lived in France, our influences are inevitably a mix of cultures. And I think, the world is so international now that our inspirations cannot be just our own. Like we will be inspired by the sea, for example, but in France, they would appreciate the element of Hellenic heritage in that, and we will design in a way that prioritizes wearability. I think that's kind of something I really feel strongly about. All our pieces, all our earrings are lightweight, and all our ring, or most of our rings, are adjustable, or our bracelets are adjustable. And so there is an element of like structure. We don't just create to and then it's like, okay, it's going to droop your ear, you're going to be unable to wear it. It's pure art. There is art and function kind of that go hand in hand. And I think that's something that I want to bring out to the world, like to make art available in a way.
And I think that's why you've managed to have so much commercial success quite quickly. Tell me about launching the brand and what was that point where you managed to achieve a global audience and see sales really go up?
Yeah, for us it was, it's social media. Our main kind of awareness channel is Instagram in a way, but as well as kind of traditional press, which all go hand in hand. We've had celebrities wear our pieces a lot, like in a very short period of time. And I think it taps into the USP of the brand, which is in essence high quality, affordable pieces.
And you speak about social media press, but knowing you've been very active in physical retail as well, doing pop-ups all over London, rigorous schedule month after month. And I think that's also a big part of your success because people can come and meet you. They can meet your mom, hear the stories about the jewellery. And I think it all culminated this Christmas when you have this amazing big space on Bond Street. So tell me about the strategy when it comes to pop-ups and physical retail as well.
So physical retail is something I started testing quite early on when I went full-time on the brand. I think people crave to see things in real life and have true connections, as well as building community. And I think you can't do that online to a certain extent, but you have to do it in physical person. We have the store on New Bond Street until end of January, early February. Maybe we'll catch a Valentine's Day. And it is a space where you can see yourself surrounded by nature. And it's something that I wanted to bring to life so people can see our inspirations in real life. I think, physical retail is something that adds on to the experience of the brand itself.
Great. So you've got the space on Bond Street for the beginning of the year. What else are you excited about for 2025? What's coming up?
So in 2025, I want to kind of expand the awareness of the brand. So I want to work with kind of just expanding the proposition of the brand, like the offering. So we will expand categories and we'll expand as well in physical retail and events as well, bringing community together. I think that's very important to kind of grow the community and people to generally experience the brand. So a combination between retail and events and growing the events area of the brand is where we're at now.
That was Alexia Karides, the founder of Ysso, in conversation with Monocle's Natalie Theodosi. And you can find out more about the brand and the business by heading to Ysso.com. You're listening to The Entrepreneurs. Well, I'm delighted to say I'm joined now by Monocle's Chiara Rimella. Chiara, you wear many hats here at Monocle. Although you're not actually wearing a hat right now, you're wearing headphones.
Disappointingly.
But enough of that. Most recently, and very excitingly, you edited Greece, the Monocle Handbook, a beautiful, sunny title. Tell me a bit about it. What an exciting project that must have been to be the steward of.
Oh, definitely. I mean, as listeners may know, I am Italian. I do say that quite a bit. But it was really interesting to shine a light on our kind of Mediterranean cousins because we share many commonalities, but also many differences. And I think Greece is a really interesting country to be focusing on right now because it is at a really interesting juncture. Because the long shadow of the financial crisis is still enough in people's memories to remember what it was like to really struggle economically as a country and not to have very many prospects in terms of entrepreneurship. And it's a painful memory of the diaspora that just led so many Greeks away from the country. But the incredible thing is that there is a sense of energy now that is astonishing. So many people coming back and so many things happening because there is a sense of kind of ebullient energy and also of a real make-do attitude. So many people quite literally sometimes making businesses out of scraps, you know, literally in a kind of a fashion sense, but also in general as an attitude, there is really a sense that people are going back to things that had been forgotten, that had been let kind of decay by the wayside and picking them back up again. A real sense of this illustrious, quite overwhelming past in some respects, and people really wanting to take it upon themselves to put a new spin on it. As it always the case with Monocle, you start off trying to tell the story of somewhere that you have to go see and visit, but really there's so much more than that, because every single place is a person. Every single place in some respects or not is a business in terms of what we're talking about here. Every hotel, every restaurant, every commercial gallery, everywhere there is someone who's tried to make a living out of it. And in the case of these businesses, they're doing quite well at it too.
Very well indeed. And actually, we featured a number of incredibly dynamic, opportunistic businesses, even on this programme. Today's show being no exception. Let's talk a little bit about one or two of the businesses featured. Leaf through the book, Chiara. It's out right now, and you've got a copy of it here. Pick us out a couple of businesses that maybe demonstrate some of those qualities, some of that dynamism that you've been telling us about.
Well, I should start by saying that tourism and hospitality is the outsized kind of leader of the Greek economy. And you can see that here when we had to make our decision of which hotels to feature. It was such a hard job, actually, because I don't know if there are that many other countries. I mean, surely Italy, France, okay. But places where there are this many really high quality independent hotels. It's not just the big chains, although, of course, there are plenty of those as well. But just so many really high end independent projects. It's astonishing, and we have featured as many of them as we could in the book.
How many pages is the book? I mean, that's the thing. You can't fit everything in, and that's, I guess, the heavy responsibility, right, of editing a volume like this.
It truly is. I mean, it's just over 220 pages, and you have to.
It's the creme de la creme in there.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard because it's also Greece is a very difficult country. You don't think it's that big, but it really is, and there's hundreds of islands, each one of which has its own specific identity, traditions, mores, and businesses, of course. So to be kind of geographically exhaustive, you would need, an encyclopedia.
More pages even than Monocle has. But sorry, I interrupted your flow. What you were going to pick out one or two of your maybe personal favourites.
From the hospitality pages, I'll just pick out a series of narratives that we kept kind of stumbling across. So many of the hotel stories that I commissioned, that I got back in my inbox, started with someone used to go on holiday in somewhere and kept seeing this abandoned building. And then once they'd gone and lived in London and had this corporate lifestyle, went back on holiday there, saw that the building was still there, and were like, do you know what? I'm going to give it a good old go. And it was almost like scripted. Like so many of the stories that I received were like that. I'm going to pick out for you Laspi in the Peloponnese, because that's basically one of these stories. In this case, is an artist, Alexandros Ntouras, who went on holiday here and then opened a few of the guest houses in 2022. But so many of the stories in this book begin like that. And I also like businesses, of which there are many in the hospitality sector, that sort of blur the boundaries between other disciplines as well. One of the people that has been in Monocle's orbit for a long time, partly because she's our neighbour here in Marylebone, is Maria Lemos, who runs Mukimu. She also now has an amazing outpost in Athens. It's a retail fashion store. But now her and her husband run a guest house in Patmos as well. I mean, it really is like a tiny little thing, but a thing of beauty. When you have in your head this like platonic ideal of what a kind of a whitewashed guest house in a chora in the middle of an island should be. Okay, well, like, you've got it. This is Pagostas by Maria Lemos and her husband, who have kind of fashioned themselves into slight kind of, hospitality entrepreneurs as well. And another story that I remember running in a magazine back when I was at the helm of the culture section is Nicolaou Residence. Now, this is the former atelier of the painter Nicolas Nicolaou, famous Greece-wide. And, it would have been a museum, but you also need to be able to sustain these places financially. And I think that's the ingenuity that you see in so many of the businesses in this country. Yeah, okay, maybe the situation might not have been as economically favorable over the years. That's why people have found ways and turned this place that was this painter's house into a little guest house so you can go and stay. And it's special. You get to see his library, you get to see his paintings, you get to see his tools. So you sort of get the best of both worlds.
And Chiara, it's interesting, and I guess we don't maybe shine a light into some of these areas in quite the same way in this book, but we've had entrepreneurs on this programme, of course, who hail from Greece, who are reimagining, traditional, even heavy industries, shipping, things like that. Tech, very, very vibrant. And whilst we maybe don't tell those stories quite the same way, tech stories don't tend to shoot quite as sunnily on the printed page. It is worth pointing out, isn't it, that there is this breadth of dynamism, of course, that's brought to bear on hospitality sectors and food and beverage. But it is pretty all-encompassing. It's a country that feels like it's on the move, despite that backdrop that you mentioned at the top, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And the hallmark, I suppose, of these books is that you have a fairly usable front section that is the hotels you should stay at, the restaurants that you should go to, and the shops that you should visit, all of which are, of course, in themselves businesses. But then we also have a section at the back where we're like, okay, put down roots. What if you want to stay? What if you do want to make this your home? And if you do, you're probably going to want to have a job at the same time as well. And we recommend a neighborhood in Athens where you can do that, but also a couple of small cities, towns on the islands where you can base yourself and start a business of your own. And I think, interestingly, island locations, we've picked out Chania in Crete and Moupolis in Syros. And you'd think, okay, well, if I move to Syros, what am I going to do? Am I just going to have a kiosk on the beach? No, the point is that these places are cities that are vibrant, that are buzzing, where a diversity of industries are operating. That idea that the islands only exist in the summer and that nothing happens in the winter because there's nothing to do is no longer true. Certainly, perhaps in certain islands that are more that have more of a tourism vocation, but certainly in a place like Syros, that's no longer true. And we have someone in a section that's called Success Stories who has done that, who has moved to Syros and has opened a commercial gallery and now lives a happy life in sunny Syros year-round, kind of doing exhibitions, but also somebody who's opened a vineyard in Tinos. So there are many options, there are many paths, and not everything is what it seems. Another thing that I think, we focus a lot on the islands, and it's natural because it's, very romantic, and I suppose it's very enticing as an idea, but Greece is made up of so much inland territory as well, and so much opportunity is popping up in regions that perhaps would not have been on people's radars before, on a hospitality point of view. But Thessaloniki is a city that keeps evolving, and that's very much becoming a sort of a proper alternative to Athens when it comes to businesses and when it comes to just flourishing as a hub.
Sunshine bursts off every page. Lovely job, Chiara. And I should say that this latest product of Chiara Rimela's endeavours, Greece, the Monocle Handbook, is available in Monocle shops now, I think, Chiara, I'm right in saying, and then in bookshops everywhere later on in February, correct? If people want to grab a copy. Comes highly recommended, presumably.
Absolutely, yes. I think I would very much encourage them to purchase a copy, not only for glorifying my ego, but because I think it's just such an interesting time to go to Greece. It's such an interesting time to witness this burst of energy. It's not quite nascent anymore, but it's just at that moment where it's really blooming. And yeah, you got to get yourself down there and meet some exciting people because there's plenty of business cards to be exchanged.
Chiara Rimela, thank you very much for joining us on The Entrepreneurs. And that is all for this episode of The Entrepreneurs. We'll be back at the same time next week. Do look out for Eureka, available every Friday. The programme was produced by Laura Kramer with audio editing by Jack Dewars. You can listen again and find out more about the show at monocle.com. That's where you can subscribe to Monocle magazine to read more about better businesses every month. Greece, the Monocle Handbook, is available in Monocle shops now and in all good bookshops from the 27th of February. You can also follow us and catch up with the archive wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to contact the team, email Laura on lrk@monocle.com. I'm Tom Edwards. Goodbye and thanks for listening to The Entrepreneurs.